It was a Tuesday afternoon when Peter sat me down at our kitchen table. The sun streamed in, making dust motes dance in the air, a scene so ordinary it almost felt rehearsed. He took a deep breath, the kind that precedes a monumental declaration, and told me he was ending things. He said I was draining him, that he needed space, freedom. I should have known then, with the way his eyes darted around the room, that there was more to it than just needing space. I'll never forget what happened in the weeks that followed. A slow burn of betrayal, anger, and finally, liberation. Hi everyone, my name is Claire. If you're anything like me, you've probably been through a relationship roller coaster or two. I want to share my story with you, a story of heartbreak, revenge, and finally finding my strength. Before I dive in, I'd love to know where you're all listening from.
Drop a comment below and let me know. I was blindsided completely and utterly. Peter and I had been together for 2 years. We had built a life together, or so I thought. We had talked about the future, about marriage, about kids. Now he was telling me I was too much. I just need to find myself, Claire, he'd said, his voice laced with a faux sincerity that made my stomach churn. It's not you, it's me. The oldest cliché in the book. I packed his bags that evening, more out of a desperate need to reclaim some control than out of anger. He kept protesting, saying he just needed a few weeks. I didn't say a word, just kept folding his shirts, his jeans, his life, and placing them neatly into a suitcase. The next few days were a blur of tears, ice cream, and endless reruns of my favorite sitcom. I tried to distract myself, to forget the hollow ache in my chest. My best friend Sarah kept telling me I was better off without him, that he was never good enough for me anyway. I knew she was right, logically, but my heart still ached. Then I made the mistake of scrolling through Instagram, and that's when my world truly shattered. There he was, Peter, my Peter, or rather, ex-Peter, posing in front of a fancy hotel pool, a cocktail in his hand, a smug grin on his face. The caption read, "Living my best life, #freedom." The location tag confirmed my suspicions, a ridiculously expensive resort in the Bahamas. It was infuriating enough, but then I swiped to the next story. There he was again, this time with a woman, her back to the camera. But I recognized the cascade of dark hair, the curve of her shoulders. Gianna, Peter's married ex-girlfriend. My blood ran cold. Gianna was married to Curtis, a guy I'd met a few times through Peter. He was a decent man, a good guy. And here was Peter, flaunting his affair with Gianna on social media, barely a week after dumping me for needing space. The audacity, the sheer gall of it took my breath away. I felt a wave of anger wash over me, hot and consuming. I had been played, manipulated, and humiliated. He'd made me feel like I was the problem, when all along he was planning this betrayal. I should have known then that I wouldn't let him get away with it. For a moment I considered just blocking him, deleting his number, trying to move on. But the image of him, grinning next to Gianna, kept flashing in my mind. It was a slap in the face, a blatant display of disrespect. And that's when I decided, in that moment, that he wouldn't get away with it. Peter started blowing up my phone a few hours later. He sent messages about how he was sorry for being so impulsive and needed a few days to clear his head. I ignored the texts. The phone calls continued for a bit, eventually petering out. But I knew what I had to do. I started researching Curtis. It was simple enough to find him on social media. He was a family man, a responsible guy who always seemed to put others before himself. After doing some background research, I reached out to him. I wrote a simple, straightforward message, explaining who I was and asking if we could talk privately. He responded within an hour, his tone cautious but polite. We arranged a call for the next morning. I spent the rest of the day pacing, rehearsing what I would say. I knew this was a risky move, that it could backfire spectacularly,
But the thought of Peter getting away with his deceit, of Curtis remaining blissfully unaware, was unbearable.
The next morning at 10 a.m. sharp, my phone rang. It was Curtis. My hands were shaking as I answered. "Hello, Claire?" His voice was tentative, a little strained. "Hi, Curtis," I said, trying to sound calm and composed. "Thank you for calling me back." There was a moment of awkward silence. So, Peter's ex-girlfriend, right? What's this all about? I took a deep breath. Curtis, I don't know how to say this, but I think you deserve to know something about your wife. I then explained everything as calmly and rationally as I could. I told him about Peter breaking up with me, about the Instagram stories, about Gianna. I didn't embellish or exaggerate, just laid out the facts as clearly as possible. As I spoke, I could hear him breathing heavily on the other end of the line. When I finished, there was a long, heavy silence. I don't know what to say, he finally stammered. I need to think about this. I'll need to verify this. I understand, I said softly. I just thought you deserved to know. I gave him the location of the resort. Check Peter's Instagram. It's all there, Curtis. Thank you, Claire, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for telling me. I hung up, my heart pounding in my chest. I had done it. I had exposed Peter's betrayal, but instead of feeling triumphant, I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. What if Curtis didn't believe me? What if he confronted Gianna and she denied everything? What if Peter found out I had told Curtis and came after me? I spent the rest of the day on edge, jumping at every sound, waiting for the other shoe to drop. The next morning, I woke up to a flurry of missed calls and text messages from Peter. My stomach clenched. I knew what was coming. I steeled myself and opened the messages. Claire, what the hell have you done? You ruined everything. I can't believe you would do this to me. I hate you. The messages escalated in anger and desperation. He accused me of being vindictive, of trying to destroy his life. He begged me to tell Curtis it wasn't true, that I had made it all up. I ignored the messages, refusing to engage with his drama. Then, a new message popped up. This time, it was from an unknown number. You're a home wrecker. Stay away from my husband. I recognized the writing style. Gianna. I blocked the number immediately. A few hours later, I received a call from Curtis. His voice was calm, almost detached. I wanted to thank you, Claire, he said. I confronted Gianna. She admitted everything. I've asked her to leave. I was silent for a moment, absorbing the news. I'm so sorry, Curtis, I said. I really am. Don't be, he said. You did me a favor. I deserve to know the truth. I was living a lie. Peter's been kicked out of the hotel. I have filed for divorce, and I have a lawyer working to see that Gianna is held responsible for her actions as well. I hung up feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Peter's affair had been exposed, his relationship with Gianna destroyed, and her marriage was over. He was suffering the consequences of his actions, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had crossed a line, that I had meddled in something that wasn't my business. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of drama. Peter continued to harass me with calls and messages, alternating between begging for forgiveness and blaming me for ruining his life. He even showed up at my apartment one night, pounding on the door and screaming my name.
I called the police and they escorted him away. My friends and family were supportive, telling me I had done the right thing. But there were others who judged me, who whispered behind my back, who called me a vengeful ex-girlfriend. I started to doubt myself, to wonder if I had overreacted. Maybe I should have just let it go, moved on with my life. One afternoon, I was walking home from work when I saw Gianna standing across the street. She glared at me, her eyes filled with hatred. I tried to ignore her to keep walking, but she stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "This is all your fault," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "You ruined my life. You ruined my marriage. You ruined your own marriage, Gianna," I retorted, my voice trembling slightly. "Peter and you made your choice. He loved me," she screamed. "He never loved you. You were just a placeholder."
I stared at her, speechless. Her face was contorted with rage, her eyes wild and desperate. I realized that she was hurting, just as I had been hurting. She was lashing out, trying to deflect her own guilt and shame. "I'm sorry, Gianna," I said softly. "I really am. But I'm not responsible for your choices." Before I could say anything else, she slapped my arm, hard. I gasped, clutching my arm. The pain was sharp and stinging. She stormed off, leaving me standing there, stunned and shaken. That night I changed the locks on my apartment. I packed all of Peter's belongings into boxes and left them in the lobby with a note. "Do not contact me again." I blocked his number, his email, his social media accounts. I cut all ties with him, completely and irrevocably. The weeks turned into months. Peter continued to try to contact me, using different phone numbers, different email addresses.
He sent flowers, cards, and even a teddy bear to my apartment. Each time I threw them away, unopened. I refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing he was getting to me. Eventually, his efforts became more desperate. He sent long, rambling emails, pouring out his heart, begging for forgiveness. He called me late at night, sobbing and pleading for another chance. He even threatened to harm himself if I didn't take him back. I ignored it all. I knew it was just manipulation, a desperate attempt to regain control. I refused to be a victim, to let him drag me back into his toxic world. One day, I received a message from Curtis. He asked if I would be willing to meet for coffee. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if it was a good idea, but I was curious to hear how he was doing, to see if he had moved on with his life. We met at a small cafe near my office. He looked tired, but also lighter. There was a sense of peace about him that I hadn't seen before. "Thank you for meeting me, Claire," he said, his voice warm and sincere. "I wanted to thank you again for telling me the truth. It wasn't easy, but it was the best thing that could have happened to me." "How are you doing?" I asked. "I'm doing okay," he said. "The divorce is finalized. It was messy, but it's over. I'm focusing on myself, on my kids. I'm trying to rebuild my life." "I'm glad to hear that," I said. "I also wanted to apologize," he continued, "for Gianna's behavior, for the messages you received. She was not herself." "It's okay, Curtis," I said. "I understand. She was hurting." We talked for a while longer about our lives, about our hopes for the future. As I listened to him, I realized that we had both been victims of Peter's selfishness and deceit, but we had both emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. As I walked home that evening, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The drama was finally over. Peter was out of my life, completely and irrevocably. I was free. I had survived the heartbreak, the betrayal, the manipulation, and I had come out on the other side, stronger and more independent than ever before. I finally realized that Peter hadn't just left my life, he had given me a gift. The gift of freedom, the gift of self-respect, the gift of a second chance, and that's when I realized I was finally happy. Some people try to dim your shine so they can feel brighter. I'm so happy I was able to reclaim my shine and give it to the world. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel for more such stories.